So, one rider here, and I just wanted to throw this out there. Anybody who's been watching the news lately, who's been following the gun control debate post Parkland, Florida, um, they could be excused if all they're doing is blindly following the media. They could be excused for walking away thinking that anybody who supports gun control is brave and courageous, and they're taking a stand, and they're sticking their neck out, and they're doing what's right. And um, I think it's time for us to sit down now that it's been several weeks. It's time for us to sit down and say to ourselves, as a country, as America, um, that this isn't the case. Um, Gun control is the modern political orthodoxy. It's the de facto response. It's the go-to thing. It's what everybody automatically and instinctively does because it's what they've been taught. So when you have a large number of people that are loud and that are angry and that are shouting and that are trying to, you know, push this view, going along with that doesn't make you some kind of brave iconoclast or person that's sticking their neck out or forward thinking individual. In fact, going along with a mindless mob never makes you any of those things. And it's easy to forget this because, first of all, the first people that were put forth as the exponents of these views were children who were purported to be, in many cases, the Parkland survivors. And nobody wants to sit there and say to somebody who survived an attempted mass murder, you know, hey, look, I understand you're upset, but you're wrong. Unfortunately, a lot of them are wrong. A lot of them get their facts wrong about firearms. A lot of them get their facts wrong about what existing gun laws are. And a lot of them get their take on their political opponents as incorrect. For example, not everybody who doesn't believe in every single gun control myth is a heartless fiend. Okay? I'm not a heartless fiend. And neither is the old guy that I ran into at work today. Uh, I was helping a customer out in the store, and it's kind of funny. You meet people, and this particular guy, he was an older fellow with a cane, and I didn't realize why he had a cane until he lifted up his pants leg and he showed me that he was missing his foot from here down, right? And he had been in the Vietnam War. He was an older fella. And he went fishing. He still did other stuff. One of the things he did was shooting. He shot a 38 Super, which I thought was pretty cool. And he did, steel silhouette shooting. He shot out to fairly good distances. I mean, this guy was an older fella, and I was really impressed by how, what he was doing. And I had to sit there and think to myself, this kind-hearted, articulate, decent gentleman, who, by the way, is also a veteran, who gave his foot for you and your freedoms, is the type of person that grandstanding gun control advocates like this David Hogg young fella are characterizing as having blood on their hands because they don't want to go along with the gun control hysteria of the moment. And that either or proposition, that you either support gun control or you support gun crime, i.e. murders like the Parkland shooting. A lot of times I think for a lot of people that's an abstract. They don't really think about what it means. I'll tell you what it means. It means that anybody who disagrees with you, including somebody like this, who might be somebody's grandfather or somebody's uncle or, whomever, who hasn't hurt anybody, is a decent fellow, because his sport of choice is target shooting instead of bicycling or archery or anything else, you're calling him tantamount to a murderer just because he doesn't want to give that up. Not because he doesn't think giving it up will, he thinks it's more important to hold on to his hobby than to save the lives of children, but because maybe he knows something that you don't. Being 50 years older and having a lot more life experience, and being, in fact, a firearms owner and an avid shooter who has experience with shooting and with what shooting entails and with what other firearms owners, such as himself, are like. And he knows that they're not the ones doing all these crimes. So guess what? Taking away their stuff, it's not an either or proposition. You can't say that, well, if you don't want to give up your stuff, you're a murderer who supports. No, because guess what? The guys doing steel target silhouette shooting at however many yards with the 38 Super, they're not the ones doing all these murders. So, of course, the fact that they don't want to give up their stuff has no relation one way or the other to whether or not children are killed by heinous criminals. And we have to stop looking at this as, okay, some of these people are survivors of a shooting, so let's just let them vent and whatever. They've been venting for weeks, and they've basically been poisoning the political debate. People who have untenable views or otherwise untenable views are hiding behind them. And, it's time to say, look, I'm terribly sorry that this tragedy happened. I'm terribly sorry for the survivors. But I had nothing to do with it. People who share my views had nothing to do with it. And you know what? If you're going to sit there and call us murderers for not wanting to give up our rights, we are going to call you on it. All right? We are not going to be nice. We are not going to be considerate because you're not being nice and you're not being considerate. You are getting out there, and with the full backing of CNN, MSNBC, whatever, you're getting out there and you're basically expouting a platform that involves sacrificing our lives, potentially, our property, definitely, our interests, definitely, and maybe even our constitutional freedoms. So yes, this is a serious issue, and we as Americans are going to take this seriously. When you weigh in on political issues of the day, nobody wants to get into a shouting match with children. But when a 17-year-old starts weighing in on political issues of the day in such a way that it starts affecting the political process and potentially could lead to laws being passed or enacted and things like that, then the rest of us have to ask, who is that person? What are they arguing for and why? And we have to ask hard questions about those things. Because if we don't, we could wake up tomorrow in a country that we don't recognize, living under laws that, maybe we might have liked to have a say in objecting to, but we chose not to because we were trying to be nice. Look, there's nothing nice about the issue of violence, whether you're talking gun violence, axe violence, knife violence, whatever. Violence is bad. Violence is brutal. Guess what? The politics surrounding it is also so. As witness, every remark coming from these Parkland survivors and their allies in the media and all of these other people characterizing anybody who happens to disagree with them as literally having blood on their hands. I'm sorry, I don't have blood on my hands. My hands are pretty clean, okay? They got a little bit of bite grease. They got plenty of calluses, which I earned. But they sure as hell don't have any blood on them. If there's blood there, it's because I cut myself working with tools, okay? So I'm not going to be guilt-tripped into some gun control BS because you're up there with your talking points. I'm going to call you out on it. And I think we all need to, right? This isn't because we're not decent people. But this is because we are people with certain rights that we don't want to give up. And we have to get past this mindset that just anybody who's going along with this gun control stuff is some kind of hero speaking out or taking a step. No, they're not. They're not brave people. They're not courageous. What they're doing takes no courage, no guts, not even any modicum of intellectual activity. Yes, I'm sure some of them are smart and articulate. But to just go mindlessly along with these political trends. And gun control is a political orthodoxy. Let's not forget that. Everything that these young people are doing, they're getting up there criticizing the politicians and their elders and saying, well, they don't really care about all this stuff. We do. Guess what? You're doing exactly what your elders and all those politicians taught you, because that's what gun control is. Gun control is the de facto modern political orthodoxy. So all you're doing is marching in lockstep with all those people who you claim to be rebelling against. Maybe if you knew a little more about the subject, I don't know. But in the meantime, the rest of us are asked to either sit down and shut up or endorse gun control. And you know what? No. I don't think there's any reason that some well-to-do, 17-year-old suburban kid who may or may not have been a survivor of the shooting, depending on where he was in the school, or if he was even in the school at the time. I don't know. I mean, I've heard conflicting reports about, how much, whether he was even on scene or not. We don't know. Nobody's asking him the hard questions. But even assuming he was in the room and a guy was shot dead next to him, that makes you an expert in being frightened out of your wits. It doesn't make you an expert in much else. That comes from hard work and effort, which he obviously hasn't put into, or he would realize that most of the people who are against this gun control nonsense aren't against it because they want more dead kids, or they want to sell guns, or they want to get reelected. Most of us are just against it because we know it's nonsense. All right? And just going along with that nonsense mindlessly because of some political windmill of the moment, that doesn't make you brave, that doesn't make you courageous, that doesn't make you a hero. That makes you a pawn. All right? Lone Rider out.